This year we have got 9 individuals who have either graduated college or graduated high school. And so at this time we're going to kind of do a presentation for them, and then I'm going to preach a sermon right at them. So if you are one of those graduates, I would like you to come up on the front row. Now, we, as always, offer an opportunity for parents to say something as well, and quite appropriate that you might do that. So if you are a parent and are going to say something this morning, you can come on up if you want, or you can wait, either way. There will be at least one person saying something because my wife said you are saying something. So I'm going to do that. So before we do that, we have got a video that we're going to play, as long as we can get that going.
I can remember when you fit in the palm of my hand. You felt so good in it, no bigger than a minute. How it amazes me, you're changing with every blink, faster than a flower blooms. They grow up all too soon. So let them be little, 'cause they're only that way for a while. Give them hope, give them praise, give them love every day. Let them cry, let them giggle, let them sleep in the middle. Oh, but let them be little. I never felt so much in one little tender touch. I live for those kisses, your prayers and your wishes. And now you're teaching me how only a child can see. Tonight while we're on our knees, all I ask is please let them be little, 'cause they're only that way for a while. Give them hope, give them praise, give them love every day. Let them cry, let them giggle, let them sleep in the middle. Oh, but let them be little. So innocent, precious soul. Turn around, and it's time to let them go. So let them be little, 'cause they're only that way for a while. Give them hope, give them praise, give them love every day. Let them cry, let them giggle, let them sleep in the middle. Oh, but let them be little. Let them be little.
Cindy should pass out Kleenex boxes if she's going to play things like that. As the years pass, certainly we see a new crop of graduates about every year. And man, we've got a bunch this year. And we're proud of you all, each and every one. So I've got cards here we would like to give to you all, and I thought it would be a little less threatening if you all came up stage at one time, but we're not going to do that. So first of all, Ben Pritchett, and what I want you to do when you come up here, I'm not going to embarrass anybody, at least not most of you. If you tell us what you're going to do, what your plans are, if you don't have plans, that's fine too. It takes a long time at times to figure out exactly what career path you're on. I know I'm going to preach, but I'm open to suggestions after that as far as that goes. So a lot of us are still at age 40 and 50 and beyond figuring out exactly what we're going to do. So that's certainly all right. So Ben, come on up here. And you guys, if you want to say anything about Ben too, you're more than welcome to do that. Talk to us.
Well, I just graduated nursing school, so guess I'll be a nurse now.
If I could speak, Benjamin, publicly, I'm proud. I am of you for the sacrifice you made for the young man you become, and to choose a profession where you can serve people doesn't surprise me. The thing I'm the most proud of, as a father, I knew that if anything happened to me when you were much younger, you accepted Yahweh God and Christ as your Savior. In your heart, I knew I was good after that. Because you would have a prosperous, peaceful, wonderful standard of living future after accepting Christ as your Savior. So I'm proud of you.
Daggone it, Aaron, I was doing okay. Marissa Robbins. Congratulations.
I just graduated from Jackson College, and I'm working for IU Health as a cardiac sonographer, and I will be, Landon and I will be getting married next fall.
Faith Cummings.
I plan on going to Ivy Tech in Bloomington to be a massage therapist.
Oh, okay, all right. Make sure. Luke Allender.
So in the fall, I'm going to Purdue, and I'm studying agricultural engineering.
Well, I will try to do this. I don't think I need the microphone, but we would like to thank you, the church family, for helping us raise our son. We've had good Christian family, parents, who have been there the entire time. And we've had a lot of sensible teachers. Wednesday nights, the leaders, Wonder Valley, John, Dennis, I won't name any more names, I don't want to forget people. But we're thankful that we have a church family who has helped us along the way. And I think the saying goes that it takes a village to raise a child. And thankfully, we have a Christian village. And so, son, we're proud of you. There's a young lady that's been hanging out at the house here lately, and we're occasionally feeding her. And so, we wish you the best also. I think Kenneth's going to make us say something now. But congratulations to all of them. And keep God in your life. And thank you, the church family.
Well, let's just jump right to it. Emma Landstrom. Come on up, Emma.
I am attending Ivy Tech in Bloomington next year to study business planning and graduate with my associates in 2 years.
So there was a point when Luke was a little guy that I came to the realization, and it was an awful day, that at some point I wasn't going to be the most important woman in his life. And at that time I started praying, and what I prayed to God was, please put somebody in his life that I can at least tolerate. And I'm happy to say that God once again answered my prayer more than enough, because I liked her the first time I met her, and I love her now. So Emma, we're very proud of you.
Clayton Hirth.
I'm just gonna working there at Lazy Diamond, and I'm gonna continue farming with my papa, my dad, and just stick with my family.
For those of you that don't know Clayton, man, get to know him. Just a fantastic young man. He spent a lot of hours at the house talking guns and trading guns and just hanging out, and it's been really has been a pleasure to get to spend time with him. Levi Hunter.
I plan to go to college. I just don't know where yet or what I'm going to study. So,
Quinn Wisely.
So for the time being, the plan is to live at my parents' house until I'm 30 or 35, and hopefully they'll keep feeding me. Not really, but I bought a sawmill the beginning of this year, and I'm planning to keep running that and hopefully expand that business and do more with that. And also, I've been preaching at Popcorn Christian Church lately, and I really kind of feel like I'm supposed to be preaching or in youth ministry or something like that somewhere. So for right now, that's the plan, but who knows what God's going to do, so.
Mindy Kenna talked. Maybe you should too. Quinn, we're very proud of you, and it seems like as the youngest, noticed a lot of you, this is the first child in your household who has graduated. And that brings all kinds of emotion too. We begin to think, oh, we're kind of getting older. And now this is our last, and I'm thinking, oh, we're old. And the prospect of facing empty nest and all that stuff. So, if he's going to be there till 30, I've got a little bit of time to think about that. But we're very proud of you and all the accomplishments. And do not think for a minute, as being the youngest child, that those accomplishments go unnoticed. Even though you weren't the first child to take the first steps or the first child to graduate, there are a lot of firsts along the way that you have accomplished. And I could talk about those accomplishments, but there are many, and I would forget some. But I guess the thing that I'm the most proud of is this last week, and this is not just an isolated incident, but this last week we were at Winter Valley, and Quinn was a camper down there. Probably the last year he's going to be able to be a camper there. And since I was the dean, besides being dad, the campers are required to come and tell the dean if they're going to be gone. So he comes and says, I'm going to be preaching at Popcorn, so I've got to leave camp to go do that. And Zoe's going with him, so I think, okay, that'll work. That's not usually MO, but we can do that. So Zoe goes with him, and he says, and Dad, I probably will be getting back a little bit late. And so all of a sudden, I raise an eyebrow and say, going out to dinner with Zoe, or what's going on here? And he said, well, because I needed him back to help with the fireworks. And he said, I'm going to be back late because there's a baptism at church and I have to do it. And man, my heart just burst to be able to think about that. And so The thing I'm the most proud of is the fact that you are fulfilling the Great Commission that Christ gave to us already at 18 years of age, that you're actively doing that. And that makes me proud. Hannah Smith. And happy birthday also, I guess. Congratulations.
I start a full-time job tomorrow in Seymour at a Christian daycare as a teacher. And I'm going to find a rich man.
Congratulations to all of you. You can go back to your seats if you like, or you can sit right here if you want to, whatever you want to do. So I want to talk to you graduates this morning. Yes. Power Hour, I'm sorry. If we can stand real quick. Power Hour and Wind Church are going to go down for their services. The kids will make their way to the back. All right, let's pray for them and for our time up here as well. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the opportunity that these kids have this morning to learn on their level. And thank you so much for the teachers that prepare the lessons for them. Just please give them attention span and help them to really learn and grow from that today. And God, I pray also for the time that we have together up here, that you would use the power of your Holy Spirit to speak through me, that I might say the words that you have for me to say today. Thank you for loving us, and Father, be with us as we continue to worship you this morning. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So I want to talk to the graduates today about the rest of your life. Now, we can't get it all in, but we're going to talk about what's going to happen with you the rest of your life. And I also want to talk to the rest of us to see if the rest of our life is going all right, to make sure we're living like we should. Several years ago, I did a series of Ecclesiastes, and I kind of fell in love with this morbid and depressing book. There's just a lot of really neat stuff that's in Ecclesiastes, and I want to use a portion of it this morning to talk to you graduates and to the rest of us about what we face in this life as time goes on. So if I can get slides up here, we're going to look at some of the scripture verses that are there. I know some of those are a little bit small. If you can kill the lights, there we go. Should be able to see that a little better. This is beginning the book. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. He says, then I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study, to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I've experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. How's that for a graduation sermon? graduation passage to look at. I mean, it's kind of depressing as Solomon starts this passage, but I want you to know there's also some great encouragement that comes with this. He's saying nothing really matters. He's saying you can't get ahead. He's saying what's the use? He's kind of saying why really go on living? Now, I remember when I graduated. It's been a while back. But I remember feeling like in some ways you had the world by the tail. Wide open. All the plans that we have, the things that we want to do, the way that we want to live our lives, we have all these ideas that we build up in our minds. And I promise if you stay with me, you'll see the hope that Ecclesiastes gives. This is written by Solomon. He's the richest man that ever lived. He's the wisest man that ever lived. So it makes sense that we pay attention to what it is that he is saying to us. So Solomon uses the phrase under the sun 29 times in this short book. He is observing mankind apart from God. He's looking at mankind as if God was not in the picture, and looking at all the stuff that we do around on this earth as if God was not in the picture. And he's making observations based on that. And sadly, a lot of the world looks at this world as if God is not in the picture. I want to start with the explanation so we don't believe life is always meaningless. He is devoting himself to study and explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. That's what he's telling us. He's devoting himself to studying all that is done on earth with the wisdom that he has so he can evaluate it. And so we want to look today at what people do and the way they live their lives. And you're getting ready to face all this as graduates. And you're getting ready to do all kinds of things. And some of them you already have in mind. Some of them will come to mind later on. It's funny how we can look at our congregation this morning and we can see all different stages of life that people are in. Our kids just went downstairs, little bitty kids. Some of us can scarcely remember when we were that age. Maybe a few fleeting memories. There's then those that are in school. There's those that are just now graduating. There are young married couples who are expecting babies. And many of us remember what that was like the first time that we found out we were expecting, the excitement or the fear and dread, depending on where you were in that stage. And then all stages completely from there on. Solomon uses the word meaningless. That's what comes to mind. He uses the word in the New Century Version, it's useless. In the King James Version, it's vanity. And that's what he is saying about life that he is discovering. Life had become that and has become that for so many, now and back then. And sadly, really sadly, there are already some graduates that feel that way about life. You guys go to school with some of them. They already feel that way about life. Vanity, meaningless, hopelessness. And we see that, and that's really sad that already there are some that feel that way. He says, what does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Have you ever asked yourself that? What is all this really for? Older folks, have you asked yourself that this week? Perhaps you have. Graduates, probably not yet. There's so much out there for us to see, so much out there for us to experience. But have you ever asked yourself of school, when you were sitting in class, learning something that you didn't care about, have you ever said, I will never use this? I've got news for you. You're right. The chances are you won't. I read Shakespeare when I was in school. Never, ever have used that. One of the beauties about homeschooling is we kind of got to pick and choose the curriculum a little bit. When I was in college, I had a class that was mandated that everyone take called Music Appreciation at 7 a.m. So when I first heard about the class, I thought, okay, cool, we're going to be studying music that I like. No, it was all classical music and opera that we had to study and listen to and identify. All of it. 7 a.m. You talk about awful. Have I ever used that? No, I have never used that. Except There's this little ditty, Mozart's in the closet, let him out, let him out, let him out. Okay, so whenever I hear that song, I can identify that Mozart wrote it. That's all I ever got from that class. So yes, there are some things that you have studied over the course of your high school career that you'll never use. That's just the way that it goes. But we ask ourselves these questions, these extra hours that we work sometimes. Does it really matter? If you help someone out and they don't really seem to care, aren't really appreciative. All of us have experienced that before. They just don't feel like you don't feel like they're all that grateful for what you did. And we say, is it really worth it? Have you ever gone and bought something new, knowing that it was only going to wear out? You just didn't know how long it was going to take. I hate buying things like appliances because I know they're just going to break. It's just a game to see how long they're going to last. And I begin to really feel what Solomon is saying here about meaningless. It's all meaningless. What am I really gaining by all this toiling that goes on under the sun? He says to us in this passage that I read that everything is cyclical. Generations, it's cyclical. The sun, it sets and it rises and it hurries back to where it has risen. The wind blows north and then it blows south. The streams flow into the sea and the sea is never full. 3,100 billion gallons a day of water evaporate on our planet and become part of the clouds, and then it rains and then it flows back to the sea. He says there's never enough hearing, there's never enough seeing, there's nothing new. Our lives can never be long enough for us to enjoy everything that there is to enjoy or amass all the wisdom and knowledge that we want to amass. And all the money that we make and the stuff that we accumulate, especially for us as Americans, the houses and the cars and the boats and the list goes on, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. That's not where our joy comes from. And I think Solomon is telling us that very pointed here. It's not where the joy comes from. It's not what gives you meaning and fulfillment in life. He says there's nothing new. He says we're not remembered when we're gone. Most of us here today are about 100 years away from being forgotten. Think about it. Do you know people from 100 years ago? You might know their name from a genealogy list that you've gotten somewhere, but that's what he tells us. So I don't preach this sermon today to depress you. I just want you to know what reality is. I want you to know what Solomon wanted all of us to know as the wisest person that ever lived, that this is the nature of life. So what else is he saying in this book? He's saying that pursuing worldly paths don't answer the deepest questions of the heart. That's what I want you all to get today. All of us, graduates and older folks and younger folks alike. That these questions, this toiling and all the stuff, these pursuing worldly paths, they do not answer the deepest questions of the heart. Education. The world says more education is the answer to happiness. Because if you go to college and you get a great education, then you can make more money, and with that money you can buy more things that make you happy. I'm not against education if it is of benefit. I am against music appreciation at 7 a.m. Definitely am against that. But I'm not against education. Education's great. But look at what Solomon found out in chapter 1, verse 13 and verses 16 through 18. He says, I applied my mind to study, to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. And then in verse 16, I said to myself, look, I've increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I've experienced much wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I've learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. That's what he found out. You want to get smarter? You might experience more grief. It might be possible. I'm not saying education is wrong. If you're on your way to college, go to college. Get a degree. Do something that you love. That is important. But I am here to tell you that going and getting educated in a field that you do not feel passionate about just so you can go make money is a huge mistake. I have so many friends who have great jobs and make really good money that absolutely are miserable in this life because they hate what they do. You have an opportunity now, all of you who are graduating, for a fresh start, to do something that you love, to do something that you're passionate about. That might take college, it might not take college, but do what you love. Because as we get older and we have families to provide for, it's very difficult just to say, I'm scrapping the whole thing and I'm going to go do something different. So now is the time to discover your passions and discover what you love in this world so that you can earn money at it and bless people at it and do what you really love. Education does not answer the deepest questions of the heart. Even if it lands you a better job, it does not do that. He says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and without that fear of God, education is ultimately futile. It doesn't answer the deepest questions of the heart. Chapter 2 begins then, and he says he undertook great projects as well. I said to myself, come now, let me back up a little bit here. Read you this one that's not on the screen. Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. So Solomon begins to explore that. He ultimately applies himself then to pleasure. And the world is full of this kind of seeking. You go to school with people now, you are around people now all the time when it's all about seeking pleasure and what kind of pleasure we can find in this world. And Solomon says he did that. He said he pursued laughter. And the Bible tells us in Proverbs that it's medicine for the soul, but it doesn't fill the emptiness of our soul. He said he pursues wine or any other mind-altering substance. It might be a Band-Aid, but it didn't fix the meaninglessness of life that Solomon saw all around him. So whether it's pleasure, whether it's wine, whether it's chemicals, whatever it is, that's a path that many people take, but it doesn't answer the basic questions of life. It doesn't really fill our soul. Solomon also said, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers, a harem, as well the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. He said, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So here he is laying it out again. All this stuff that he has done. He undertook projects. Look at what he did. Look at what that passage says he did. This was not just adding a room onto the house. I mean, he was doing some serious stuff here. Great big projects and vineyards and amassing silver and gold and all the stuff that we work for, houses and fruit trees and slaves and herds and flocks and silver and gold and singers and a harem. And he denied himself nothing that his eyes desired. See, most of us aren't even in a position in this life where we could even do that. Denying ourselves nothing that our eyes saw that we desired. Because we have limited resources, and King Solomon had unlimited resources pretty much. And so he did this for us. He went on this journey for us, and he's reporting back to us what it was that he found out. Ever heard that riches don't bring happiness? Riches don't bring happiness. Now, my response to that generally is that may be true, but I would like to try it for a short time. Solomon did the research for us. He found that they don't bring happiness. They don't bring contentment. They don't answer the questions that you ask yourself when you lay in bed at night staring at the ceiling. Here's a guy who literally had it all. Everything. And he said, it's meaningless. Everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun, he said. Yet how often in this world are we in the middle of the same pursuit? Going after the same kinds of things. I am not against hard work. I am not against education. I am not against earning money. I'm not against buying nice stuff. But if that's where you are getting your fulfillment, and you think somehow that amassing these things will bring you that fulfillment, you're mistaken. Because in the end, we all die. What is that they say? The guy with the most stuff at the end of his life still dies. Still dies. Can't take it with us. We can't take it with us. And Solomon says, I've chased after all of this, and I found that it was meaningless. I'll be happy when I graduate. I'll be happy when I finish college and I get a good job. I finish trade school and I get a good job. I'll be happy when I find a rich man and marry him. I'll be happy when I accomplish these things. That's when I will be truly happy. I'll be happy when I have a house, or when I have a nicer house. I'll be happy when I have more land. I'll be happy when let's back it off a little bit, when I have a reliable vehicle. I'll be happy. I remember a time when I said, I'll be happy if I have the money to put gas in my not reliable vehicle. Most of us remember a time like that. And we go through in our own minds and we formulate these things. Whether we want to admit it or not, I'll be happy when I have a husband or a wife who loves me. I'll be happy when I have a nice 401k. Solomon says, it's all meaningless. It is all meaningless. A chasing after the wind. So young people, as you embrace this life and you make your plans for the future, remember that there's a lot of stuff out there that's fine, and pursuing some of those things is fine, but I want you to understand that it does not answer the deepest questions of the human heart. Never has, and it never will. Solomon said, he continues, and he says, then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks around in the darkness. But then I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Let's boil that down. Whether you're smart or whether you're dumb, you're going to die. That's exactly what he's saying here. Doesn't matter. He says, then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. And Solomon says, even his great wisdom will not spare him from eventual death. A chasing after the wind. Here's some more scripture. So I hated life, he says, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. And as people get older, many times in this world, you might love your kids. You might have friends that love your kids. But you say, I've toiled and I've worked for all of this, and now my kids, they're dunderheads. I really don't want to leave all this stuff to them because I don't know what they're going to do with it. How many businesses do we see? The work ethic of the person who builds that business up, and it completely falls on its face in the second generation because of the entitled kids that are running it, who have never been taught to work and never been taught how to make things happen. We see it all the time. This is what Solomon's talking about here. And he began to despair because of that. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun, for a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and great misfortune. He says, what do people get for all the toil and anxious striving for which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. And he says then, a person can do nothing better than eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without Him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases Him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, He gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the person who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So Solomon has pursued all these different avenues with the wisdom that God gave him. And he's discovered the meaning of life. Oh, that question has been pondered for years and years. What is the meaning of life? People have devoted their entire lives to sitting and thinking and trying to get some kind of revelation as what the meaning of life might actually be. Solomon has done the work for us. I like it when someone does a lot of work and then leaves a little bitty paragraph or a book like this that I can read and say, okay, that makes sense. I don't have to go make all those mistakes. I don't have to chase all those things. I can just read what the smartest man in the world said about it, the richest man in the world said about it, and I can say, yeah, that's spot on, because I can't do any better. I cannot possibly understand it more. So Solomon says, here's the conclusion of the matter. This is the cycle that the rejecter of God is caught in. And I want you young people to understand today, and us old fogies too, that those who reject God are doomed and cursed to be caught in this cycle. Everything's meaningless. I make money, I die, I give it to somebody else. Meaningless. All the toil, all the pleasure, all the everything, meaningless apart from God. You graduates are entering into a time in your life where you have more freedom. With that freedom, you can honor God or you can reject God. There's a great number of folks in the 18 to 20-year-old category that decide that they're going to reject God. And even if not reject Him, fill their lives with other things that they allow to take His place. And often, they don't come back to Him until it dawns on them, we have 3 kids. We really ought to have our kids in church. And my response to that is, yes, you should, but you never should have left, because you need to be there too, so you can be an example to them, following God and serving God through the thick and the thin and the difficult times and the easy times, that God is always there and a part of your life. This is time that you'll have to make that decision. When you're at college, wherever that may be, if it's far away, are you going to attend church on a Sunday morning, or are you going to decide to skip because mom and dad aren't there guilt-tripping you into going? Or threatening you if you don't go. A little more freedom than what you've had before. And with that freedom, you can honor God or you can choose to not honor God. You can ask a whole lot of adults who made the decision to back away and to fill their lives with things other than God. It took them a long time to come back, and they can tell you, don't leave. Don't fill your lives with things other than Him that would prevent you from the relationship that you need to have with Him. This cycle, meaninglessness, uselessness, vanity of vanities, as the King James Version says, it doesn't matter what you do, you will not find fulfillment in it. Apart from God, all the roads that you take will not lead you where you need to be. It doesn't matter what you do. These worldly paths will all lead to dead ends. Education, pleasure, projects, wealth, they don't answer the basic questions of the human heart. But yet the world tries to fill our lives with these things. The Bible says that there is a void. Ecclesiastes 3:11 talks about it. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. He set eternity in the human heart. There is a void in our lives that cannot be filled with anything except God. You can chase after all the other stuff that's out there, the pleasure, the possessions, the chemicals, whatever. And it will not lead you to a point of contentment in your life because it doesn't answer those questions. So the world as that Solomon is mentioning here, all of them. It will lead you down all of those paths in an attempt to get you to enjoy stuff here, enjoy stuff here. Let's make our lives complete by going down all of these paths. Education will really make you happy, they'll tell you. Without God, the more knowledge, the more grief. Not saying don't get educated. I'm saying if you're relying on it for your fulfillment and your happiness in this life, you are going to be disappointed. Degrees behind your name do not bring you lasting joy. They just don't. Absolutely not. Pleasure. The world will tell you to try alcohol, try drugs, try sex, try all of these things that's out there, and it will in some way help you to be fulfilled. But it's a dead-end road as far as fulfillment goes. It will not lead you to lasting joy. Do not believe the world when it tells you that. They will tell us that accomplishments will help to fill that void, and while they might make us feel good for a time, they will not answer those basic questions that we ask ourselves in the darkness. What about wealth? There are lots of things that we can buy that bring us happiness for a short time. But depression is waiting at the end of that road too. No matter how much wealth you amass, suicide is common amongst the very rich also. If you've ever looked at someone who was very, very wealthy and found out that they ended their own life, and you might be tempted to ask yourself the question, they had everything. They had everything to live for. Why would they go and do that? Because wealth does not bring fulfillment. Because it's a road that ultimately leads to a dead end. Solomon hit it square here. In talking about all these different paths that the world takes, they do not bring us to fulfillment. None of these worldly roads lead us in this life where we are supposed to go, because we are created for God. We are created to be His. And he says then in chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. I want you to know, for those who have been on some of these roads for a while, that God is waiting at the end of all of these roads that the world leads us down. At the end of the education road, there is God. Many ignore Him and try pleasure. When that disappoints, there's God. Then we move on to projects and wealth, and when they let you down, there is God. At the end of all of these roads that we would attempt to take, there is God. I have often heard it said that none of us can live long enough to make all of the mistakes that there are to make. Sometimes I think I try. And you might too. But I know I have found at the end of every road, there is God. He's waiting for us. So whatever endeavor you are on right now, whatever you are chasing besides Him that leads you to believe that there is happiness, there is fulfillment, there is something that really is going to bring me contentment, I want you to know it's going to disappoint you. The luster will wear off. The shiny will dull. Because we are created by God and for God. to be His. So why don't you save yourself, graduates, and people who are younger than whatever age you want to throw in there, why don't we not try all the other roads? What a novel idea. Why don't we right now remember that it's God that brings us the peace that we seek? It's God that fills the void in our life where there is emptiness. It's Him that completes us, not all the other stuff out there that we chase. Because if you chase after all these things, you will come up empty. How many will you try? I don't know. Some people try to try them all. Solomon did. He tried them so he could figure it out, and he did. And he said, that's not where fulfillment is found. And even Christians get caught in this cycle, thinking that there's something else in addition to God that is needed for fulfillment. There's something else in addition to Him that will really make me happy. And every time we try something in addition to Him, to add some happiness, to add some joy, to add some contentment to our life, we find out that all of that stuff is found in Him and Him alone. What are you chasing right now? I want you to know that if it's less than God alone, it's meaningless. That's not to say that some of these things that I have mentioned aren't great things. Having extra here on this earth so we don't have to worry about where our next meal comes from, that's a good thing. I'm not down on that at all. Having savings for the future, that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Having education, that's not a bad thing either. That can be a really great thing. But if you think all of those things are going to make you happy, it's not where it's found. Marrying the hottest girl that you can find, guys, that might make you happy for a little while. But there'll be a time where you wake up in the morning probably and say, what have I done? Girls, marrying the fittest, most athletic, best-looking guy you can find, that might make you happy for a little while. But they get old and fat and bald too. I'm just saying. That happens. All the stuff that we think brings happiness, it doesn't. Our happiness, our peace, and contentment needs to be wrapped up in the person of Jesus Christ. That's what makes us tick. That's the void that was created within us. It has to be filled with Him and Him alone. Because education and pleasure and wisdom and projects and wealth, they're not evil things. But apart from God, they will not answer the deepest questions about our existence. They will not. They will not give you peace at night when you go to sleep. All of those things will not. So what are you pursuing? Amongst all the other things in this life that we are involved in, often education, some pleasure, wisdom and projects and wealth, those things may be a portion of your life as you live. Just remember that they don't last. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, I want to leave you with this. It says, therefore, my dear brothers, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That has to be your primary focus. You want to make a good living? That's great. You want to marry a great girl or a great guy? That's great. You want to enjoy the things of life? That's great. You want to have a whole house full of kids? That's great. You want a nice car? Wonderful. Nice house, that's great. As long as you understand that none of those things last. There has to be something else in our lives that we are pursuing besides just all that stuff. And that, Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians, is our labor in the Lord. In the midst of all this other stuff that we do, the thing that really lasts is our labor in the Lord. That's what lasts from generation to generation to generation. You have the ability we all have the ability to change our futures, to change our family trees by imparting the knowledge of God to our children and grandchildren, and can go on down the line. And we can make a difference in someone's life because of our labor in the Lord. So he says, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And I'm not telling you, this is not saying work of the Lord as if everybody's going to be a missionary, or everybody's going to be a full-time Christian service kind of a person. Not saying that at all. But it's saying our focus as God's people needs to be that we are laboring in the Lord, wherever it is that He chooses to put you. It is not in vain when you're laboring for Him.